For months, it seemed like Mexico and the United States were heading straight for a serious clash over trade. U.S. President Donald Trump had been warning about placing heavy tariffs, extra taxes, on goods coming from Mexico. It sounded like trouble was just around the corner and people on both sides of the border were getting nervous. Then something unexpected happened. Right when the tariffs were supposed to start, the U.S. suddenly backed off. In Mexico, people were thrilled. There was celebration in the streets and a huge sense of relief, especially because this turn of events followed some bold and careful moves made by one of Mexico's rising political stars, Claudia Sheinbaum. At a time when the stakes were high and nerves were frayed, Sheinbaum stepped up with a cool head and a steady hand. While Trump continued with loud warnings, she kept her tone measured. She didn't match threat for threat, but she made it clear that Mexico wouldn't sit back and accept unfair treatment. If the U.S. went ahead with those tariffs, Mexico was prepared to respond with its own measures. This calm strength made a big impression, especially because Mexico had so much to lose. More than 80% of its exports go to the United States, so any big disruption could have hurt workers, businesses, and families all over the country. Products like auto parts, electronics, fruits, and clothes, things that cross the border every day, were all at risk. People feared job losses and a potential economic downturn. Meanwhile, Trump wasn't just talking about trade. He linked the tariffs to immigration, saying Mexico needed to do more to stop migrants from crossing into the U.S. This added more pressure, turning a trade issue into a political one as well. Even so, Sheinbaum didn't rush into conflict. Instead, she used diplomacy, choosing to speak through actions rather than emotions. Her message was firm. Mexico would not be intimidated, but it also wouldn't give up on dialogue. That approach helped turn the conversation around. As talks continued behind closed doors, Mexico made its case clearly. Cutting off trade wouldn't just hurt Mexicans, it would also cause serious problems for American companies that rely on Mexico's goods. This quiet but powerful argument seemed to work, because just days before the tariffs were supposed to begin, Trump pulled back. Afterwards, Sheinbaum spoke to a huge crowd in Mexico City's famous Zocalo Square. Thousands gathered, waving flags and showing support. She thanked the people for their patience and pride, and she reminded everyone that Mexico had stood its ground with dignity. She spoke of respect, unity, and the long, complicated relationship between the two countries, one filled with both tension and cooperation. Rather than brag, she emphasized the importance of defending sovereignty and using smart leadership, not fear, to handle challenges. Her message was simple but powerful. Mexico is strong, and when tested, it rises. While this might not be the end of trade tensions, Mexico proved that it could protect its interests and speak with confidence on the global stage. And that's something that resonated far beyond politics. It spoke directly to the heart of a proud, determined nation. Just 2 days after a tense back and forth between leaders, things took a surprising turn. After a phone call, President Trump told Claudia Sheinbaum that Mexico wouldn't be hit with tariffs on U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement goods, at least not until April 2nd. He said it was a gesture of respect. Sheinbaum, staying calm and focused as usual, didn't celebrate with fire and fury. Instead, she told the public that the upcoming Sunday event wouldn't be a protest. It would be a festival. A moment to come together, celebrate unity, and stay alert. So far, her approach has been working. She's focused on respectful conversation with the U.S. and said that as long as things move forward with mutual understanding, Mexico will keep choosing diplomacy. But she also made it clear if things change and the pressure returns, people should be ready to stand together again. "We must stay aware," she told the crowd, "and act when necessary." If the U.S. brings the tariffs back, Sheinbaum said Mexico won't hesitate to reach out to Canada or look beyond North America for new trading partners. The message was clear. Mexico isn't trapped. There are options, and Mexico is ready to explore them. Reporters asked her what's behind her calm and careful strategy. Sheinbaum explained that staying cool in moments of pressure is not just wise, it's necessary. After all, Mexico leans heavily on trade with the United States. Over 75% of the country's exports head north, and any sudden shift in that flow could seriously shake Mexico's economy. To give you a picture of just how connected the two economies are, last year alone, the U.S. brought in over $500 billion in goods from Mexico, while sending back around $334 billion. That gap, more than $170 billion, shows just how much the U.S. imports from its southern neighbor. But it's not just Mexico. Canada too depends on U.S. markets for most of its exports. The whole region is linked by massive trade flows and tightly woven supply chains. Still, Mexico stands out, especially in car manufacturing. Nearly 27% of its U.S. exports are vehicles and auto parts, compared to just 13% for Canada. So, when a trade fight threatens that industry, Mexico has a lot at stake. Sheinbaum, who only stepped into office in October, is already making waves. With approval ratings as high as 85%, she's won over much of the country. Her background in science, her experience as the mayor of Mexico City, and her strong stance on social justice have made her both admired and influential. Many people believe she's on track to be the next president. When Trump first floated the idea of big tariffs on Mexican goods, Sheinbaum didn't hesitate. She called it an attack on Mexico's dignity and said that her government would respond with strength if pushed. That tough, no-nonsense attitude struck a chord with the public. So, when the Trump administration signaled early in 2025 that a 25% tariff on auto parts might actually go into effect, Sheinbaum moved fast. She gathered manufacturers, met with community leaders, and made sure everyone understood the plan. If the U.S. imposed tariffs, Mexico would match them. No empty threats, just a firm, fair warning. In that same week, Mexico's foreign ministry made things official. They sent a message to Washington and outlined a list of U.S. products that could be taxed in return, everything from avocados to steel, beer to tomatoes. The goal was simple: make the U.S. understand that pushing Mexico would come with consequences. Back in the U.S., things got confusing. On March 10, 2025, news headlines exploded. Trump's tariff delay, a mess of mixed messages. The White House couldn't seem to decide what came next. Were the tariffs paused for good, or just for now? Nobody knew for sure, but in Mexico, the reaction was clear. People felt hopeful and proud. They saw their leaders take a strong but smart approach. No shouting matches, no reckless moves, just careful planning, unity, and a reminder that Mexico wouldn't be bullied. "We stood up for ourselves," Sheinbaum said. "We showed we won't back down, and we got results." Claudia Sheinbaum stood before the people and spoke with confidence. Not long after, Mexican newspapers lit up with headlines celebrating her win. She hadn't just kept her cool, she'd helped steer the country away from a full-blown trade disaster. Over in the U.S., some experts admitted what others wouldn't say out loud. The Trump administration didn't actually want a trade war with Mexico. It might have sounded tough during speeches, but behind the scenes, things were more complicated. After all, getting the new trade deal, called the USMCA, finalized had already been a struggle. And now, big car companies were raising the alarm. If new taxes were slapped on parts coming from Mexico, their factories would slow down or even shut down. The truth was, many American businesses relied on Mexico to keep running. At the same time, Mexico was ready with its own response. A list of U.S. products, especially agricultural ones, was being prepared for retaliation. This hit close to home for farmers in states like Texas and California, many of whom supported Trump. If Mexico taxed their goods, they could lose serious money. That kind of trouble right before an election? Risky. So, was Sheinbaum playing chess while others played checkers? She didn't even hold the country's highest office, but as the leader of Mexico City and a key figure in the ruling party, she held real influence. Her voice mattered, at home and abroad. Backed by President López Obrador, she took a clear stand. Mexico wanted peace and cooperation, but it wouldn't accept unfair treatment. Her calm, steady attitude caught attention, even in the U.S., where some media called her cold-blooded in the best way possible. She had helped cool things down just in time. Rather than argue loudly in public, Sheinbaum and her team worked behind closed doors. They reached out to powerful voices in the U.S., lawmakers, business leaders, and farming groups. They explained how hurting Mexico's economy would also hurt American families. If goods like tomatoes and avocados got taxed, prices would go up in U.S. grocery stores. If factories slowed down in Mexico, assembly lines in the U.S. would feel it too. Their quiet approach worked. The Trump administration blinked. Tariffs? Not right now. People in Mexico cheered. In the streets, Sheinbaum's name was on everyone's lips. "We stood our ground," she said, "and if they push again, we'll push back." What started as fear of being pushed around by a bigger neighbor, turned into something else. People were proud. The message across the country was loud and clear. We won't be treated like a doormat. Newspapers didn't hold back either. One headline read, "Sheinbaum puts Trump on the defensive." And with the threat lifted, at least for the moment, businesses across Mexico celebrated. Farmers, factory workers, and steel workers could breathe again. Nothing had been shut down. Jobs were safe for now. Trucks kept moving across the border. Supply chains stayed alive. But no one knew how long the peace would last. Could the tariffs come back? Maybe. But Sheinbaum made her message clear. They tried once. We didn't back down. We won't next time either. This boldness only boosted her popularity. Talk started spreading. Maybe she'd run for president in 2026. If this trade standoff was any sign, she knew how to handle pressure. Meanwhile, things looked messy in the U.S. While some officials said the tariff threat was just on pause, others weren't so sure. The media called it a confusing mess. Investors didn't know whether to keep building in Mexico or start pulling back. Even farmers who had supported Trump started asking questions. Is this really good for us? Behind all the noise, one simple truth came into focus. No one wins in a trade war. Everyone loses. And it turns out that was exactly the point Sheinbaum and her team had made to American business leaders and politicians. Even members of Congress began to change their tone, saying tariffs were a clumsy tool that would hurt both sides. As the White House stepped back, maybe temporarily, maybe for good, the debate in the U.S. grew louder. Had Trump backed down? Was he failing to keep promises? And why, some asked? Couldn't the U.S. just force Mexico to agree? But down in Mexico, the mood was different. The country had stood tall, made its case, and come out stronger. And at the heart of it all was a calm, confident leader who showed that even in tough times, smart diplomacy can win the day. Some folks in the U.S., and especially those who were counting on tough talk and action about immigration and the border, are feeling let down. They expected big moves. What they got instead was a pause, and from their point of view, a win for Mexico. That hasn't gone over well with Trump's most loyal supporters. But is Mexico totally in the clear? Not really. With another U.S. election creeping up, there's still a chance the tariff threat could come roaring back. Politicians often bring up hot topics right before votes, and immigration is definitely one of them. Trump might just say, Mexico didn't stop the migrants, we'll hit them with tariffs. Mexico sees this coming. Claudia Sheinbaum has already warned that the threat isn't gone, just delayed. She's made it clear, if tariffs come back, Mexico won't stay quiet. They'll answer, point for point. Her message stands out because she keeps pushing for a fair, respectful approach to migration, one that treats people with dignity. That puts her at odds with Trump's stricter views. He's all about building walls and shutting down the border. Sheinbaum, on the other hand, wants to deal with migration in a way that's humane and doesn't turn Mexico into a checkpoint. So could there be more tension down the road? Definitely. If Trump brings up tariffs again, Sheinbaum says Mexico is ready. We'll hit back with our own list, she said more than once. And it's not just words. Mexico has that list ready to go with taxes targeting U.S. goods if things get ugly. Even President Lopez Obrador has weighed in. He said that while the U.S. is an important partner, Mexico won't sacrifice its self-respect. This isn't a country that's going to fold under pressure. Not anymore. Even though trade between the two nations is still going strong and the new trade deal is technically in place, politics could stir the pot at any moment. The balance might hold, for now, but all it takes is one move to shake things up. Through all this, Scheinbaum's profile in Mexico is rising fast. Many people see her as brave, sharp, and unwilling to bow to outside pressure. She's earning serious respect, especially for defending Mexico's economy and standing up to a U.S. president. Some critics say she's being dramatic, playing to the crowd, but to most, she's a symbol of strength. She's not just focused on trade either. She keeps talking about fixing the economy from the inside, helping everyday people and making long-term changes. That's helped her win even more support. But beyond tariffs, there's another big issue: the wall. Trump still wants to build a bigger barrier between the two countries, and he's pushing Mexico to stop migrants heading north. Mexico, caught in the middle, says it's not going to turn into a wall of people or a full-time immigration cop. Sometimes they set up temporary camps, but it's not full cooperation. This difference in how each side sees the problem is part of the ongoing struggle. Scheinbaum keeps returning to one key idea: you don't solve problems by punishing people. That mindset clashes directly with Trump's belief that pressure, like walls and tariffs, is the only way forward. And so, as the U.S. election draws closer, the same questions are coming back. Will Trump bring up tariffs again to fire up his voters? If he does, how will Mexico answer? The answer, according to Scheinbaum, is simple: we'll respond just like before. If there is another round, it could be even more intense than the last. But not everyone in the U.S. is thrilled about that possibility. Many business leaders want things to stay calm. After all, a trade fight would hit both countries hard, hurting companies, workers, and shoppers on both sides of the border. Car parts, fresh produce, electronics, steel, so much of what Americans use comes from Mexico. And for Mexico, the U.S. is its biggest customer. Breaking that connection would be like cutting off a lifeline. Nobody really wants that. Scheinbaum knows this. She's used it to her advantage. She's made it clear, tariffs don't scare us, but they hurt everyone. For now, that message seems to be working, but the road ahead is uncertain. Will Scheinbaum stick to her steady, diplomatic style if things heat up again? Or will she take a harder line? And what about Trump? Will he see tariffs as a winning strategy or a political gamble? The future's still wide open. What we do know is that, right now, Scheinbaum is riding high. The tariffs are on hold. Mexico is breathing easier. And her popularity at home? Only growing. Let's see where it all goes next. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you appreciated this video.